Many of you know that for the last year we've been behind the scenes following Midnight Sun, which has turned into one of the most extraordinary investment stories. And we've been there the whole time, from simple hope and ambition all the way through to the point we're at now, which is a potential unicorn. Recently, things have been moving so fast, we just knew we had to grab some time with Adrian. So in this video, we're sharing the answers to the key questions you wanted us to ask him.
Adrian, we've been following the Midnight Sun story for over a year now, but it really feels that we're getting to the business end of this journey. Where are you now in terms of the results and in terms of the investments?
Well, this is the thing. If you think back to when we started this journey, right? This was about making a discovery. We knew we had the property. We knew we had the right location. We knew we were in a position to do something really exciting and really unique, but we needed to accelerate the plan. So we raised the money. We put the funding in place. Kevin Bonnell came in. We put all the pieces in place, in sequence, in order, and ready, locked and loaded to do what we've done now. Everything has come together and it's culminated in a discovery. So we have the discovery. Dumbo is real. This is it. So now we're at this inflection point where not only is Dumbo real, we're accelerating the plan, we're accelerating the growth, we're defining this brand new copper system in the top place in the world to explore for copper. Talk about exciting. We're at around 130 drill holes into the program, and the guys have hit it. They've nailed it.
And when you say you've got this discovery, what is it that turns a discovery, some copper there, to something which is, this is really exciting amounts of copper that's going to be a vast system? What is it that turned the discovery into the vast system?
So if you think about it, looking back to the very first episode we did, looking back to all the time we've been talking about this, the first sign that we had something special was this giant soil anomaly. So when we talk about a soil anomaly, we're talking copper in soil at surface, over 20 kilometers. And in our case, the largest and highest grade soil anomaly on record in Zambia, surrounded by these billion-ton mines. You have this giant soil anomaly. You think it's something enormous, but now you need to go and prove it. So you take all these steps. You take the first step, which is the soil sampling. You take that to the next level by going in and carrying out geophysics, which we did. This was the dipole IP survey that allowed us to get a data set that could combine that geochem anomaly at surface with what the heck was going on at depth, put them together, develop a signature, and make the real discovery. The real discovery is drilling. So to go in systematically for the very first time in history and drill Dumbo from top to bottom, and that's exactly what we're doing. So we went in, drilled 2 stratigraphic holes, which is basically drill holes that tell you what the rock looks like at depth. What are we dealing with? What does the unit look like? And then hole number 3, that's the discovery. And from here on in, we've been on the system. So this is a true, bona fide, brand new discovery in the land of giant copper deposits.
And so you're looking for here the length of the deposit, the width of the deposit, the depth, and I guess the quality when you're doing all those different dimensions.
Yeah.
So how many holes will it require to be drilled to prove this out?
It's a really good question. I think when you look at the size and scale of this, so you've got 20 kilometers to go and explore and build out and develop and define. So how many drill holes does it take to define 20 kilometers? It's a lot. It's a vast amount of drill holes. But we look at it in a very systematic way. So what we did was we started at the very south end of Dumbo, at the very south end of that target, and we build what we call a grid. So you lay out the drill holes east to west, north to south, and then you drill every 100 meters across the deposit, north to south, along the deposit, and you just keep proving more and more and more and more and more. And so if you look at the initial drilling we've done now, we're close to 20,000 meters of drilling, and you're probably looking at 40 to 50,000 to define the first half of the Dumbo system. And most of those holes are between, let's call it 100 and 200 meters depth. So the mineralization tends to start right near surface, goes to a maximum depth of maybe 200 meters. So some of the holes will vary. Some will be 100 meters deep, some will be 250 meters deep. You need to make sure you cut right through that mineralization from top to bottom and get a true width as to what it looks like. But to answer your question, it's a lot of drilling.
It sort of sounds like a giant game of battleships. Are you having success with these drill holes? Are you having a high number of positive returns?
Yeah, the key is consistency, right? And the interesting thing about these deposits is that they're called basement dome hosted deposits. So if you think about in the context of copper, there's 2 different main deposit types. So there's sort of stratabound or basement dome hosted They're a bit different from one another, but those are the two you see in this belt. And then there's porphyry copper deposits, which are what you typically see globally. Porphyry copper deposits are very deep, they're very difficult, they're very expensive, but they are the most typical type of copper deposit. These things are different in that they're very, very shallow. They come right to surface. So your mineralization starts at surface, runs to maybe 150 or 200 meters depth in multiple layers, but you build your tonnage on strike, not at depth. So when I say on strike, what I mean is that kilometer by kilometer along the surface, you're building a deposit that's relatively the same depth, very, very shallow, and just runs and runs and runs and runs and runs. So when you look at what these copper intercepts can look like, they're going to range anywhere from 10 to 20 meters of thickness. And from a consistency standpoint, the systems themselves are very homogeneous. So once you find that magic signature, that silver bullet that says, this is what tells us that the mineralization is there. In our case, it's a combination of that IP survey we ran and the geochem signature at surface. You find this little roadmap, you find this signature. Once you have the signature, you lay that signature out across the stratigraphy, across that whole big target, and you should be able to stay on it pretty well the whole way along. So it becomes a case of making it bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger as you go.
So of these 65 holes, what's the percentage hit rate? Is it 10 out of 65, 50 out of 65? What are we looking at?
So if you think about the way we drilled it, first step is you go in, you always have to drill 2 or 3 stratigraphic holes. So again, we're drilling holes that are testing the rock, testing the area. And if you think about Dumbo, it's a giant region where it's covered in granite. It's called a basement dome. It's about 1.5 billion years old. You have this giant rock. It's all granite and nice. And in that, there's this copper plumbing system. So you have to drill a couple of holes to get an idea of what does it all look like? What is the setting? What's the timing? What is the geology? How does this thing sit in there? So once you have that information, then you target the actual area that is the copper system itself. In our case, that was hole number 3. So we did the stratigraphic holes. The first real hole hit right what we were looking for. From that point forward, we've stayed on the system since hole 3. So the consistency, and this is the goal, when you get in there, you want to be consistent. Once you're on it, you find that signature, you know what you're looking for, and you hit and hit and hit and hit and hit. And the goal is to get that consistent hit rate up to 90, 95%.
What sort of size, what is the scale are we actually now talking about? Because you talked about this is the theoretical size. Is the theoretical size now appearing to be the true size?
Yes. So what we're looking at is 20 kilometer soil anomaly, right? So our belief going in was that that system was going to run that entire 20 kilometers. We still believe, our thesis is that this will hold up for the whole 20 kilometers. Now, all of that at this point is probable. If we took the entire 20 kilometers and we split it in half. So start at the south, be as methodical and concise as we can. Let's start at the south. Let's work our way north in an absolutely methodical fashion. And let's take this thing to that point. That will give us 11.5 kilometers of strike length. So that's goal number 1. Let's prove that it's 11.5 kilometers long. At 11.5 kilometers, this thing will be on the map on a global scale. So let's get it to that point. And at this point, there's no doubt in our minds that we're on something that we think can run that whole 11.5 kilometers. And the 20 kilometers, if you include that, you've got another 9.5 kilometers to the north. It looks no different. So the geochem is there. Everything is there. We know we have historic drilling from First Quantum that has hit sulfide mineralization, the same thing we're getting down south, all the way to the northern tip of that target. So there's nothing to tell us that we don't think it can go that whole distance.
And you said on the map and a global scale. I mean, this game in some ways is always relative. So I can understand this. How does this compare to the other big sites that you may have known or know about in Zambia? What is the comparison here?
So there's a couple different unique things. So when you look at this whole region, and I know we've talked about this before, but when you look at this, you're talking about a region that breeds billion-ton deposits as an average. Okay, you let that sink in for a second. Billion-ton deposits as an average. Look at Chile, look at Panama, look at Arizona, look at Argentina. You're lucky to find a billion-ton deposit. And if you do, it's likely 2 kilometers underground and at the top of the Andes or something. So pretty difficult place to get something going, right? You look at the Zambia-Congo copper belt and you look at the Domes region, which is where we're working. Every deposit is over 1 billion tons. You've got Ivanhoe's Kamoa-Kakula, 1.4 billion tons at almost 3% copper. You've got Barrick's Lumwana mine next door, 1.6 billion tons at 0.52. And Kansanshi, First Quantum's flagship, right next door to us, 1 billion tons at 0.66. That's the scale we're looking at, okay? Our target is bigger than the footprint of most of those mines by a significant margin. So that target has the potential to put it in that absolute top echelon of copper deposits, both in Zambia and on a global scale. And these are the biggest copper deposits in Africa. So when you start to think about what we're actually looking to build out, it's enormous in any jurisdiction. And it happens to be in the best jurisdiction on the planet. And then you start to look at the geopolitical landscape. In Zambia right now, you have the 5 biggest copper mines in Africa, right? They're billion-ton deposits that are all near surface. So you've got a global copper deficit looming. You have a situation where the world is racing to find new copper supply. Like, where are they going to get it? Where is it going to come from? The only place on the planet that has big enough deposits that are shallow enough to actually have an impact on that copper deficit is Zambia. It is the Domes region. It's the region we're working in. So you have the US announcing that the State Department is putting $350 million into building a rail line that connects every project in the Domes region of Zambia, including Midnight Suns, with a western port in Angola that'll get all that material out, and it can go to Europe and the US. And then a week later, China announces a $1.4 billion program to build a competing rail line going east from the exact same point to a port in Tanzania to take the copper to China. You have a global tug-of-war happening over these properties, and some of the largest copper deposits on the planet. We're right in the middle of it with a brand new discovery. That puts us in a pretty amazing spot.
You're saying that $1 billion is the sort of the big size that you get in this region. What sort of size, what sort of estimated size is the Midnight Sun deposit?
Well, when you look at it as far as we go in, right, you have to look at the kind of size and scale as far as what can it be. We know we have a bigger footprint. We have more strike length than they had at Lumwana. We haven't done enough work to really define the edges of it yet. So now what we know is we have a discovery. We know it's real. We know the system is real. We know that what we were targeting is exactly what we found, with a few twists and turns. There's different geological things we're finding out as we go, all to the upside. So now we kind of look at it and go, what are we targeting? What we're targeting is a minimum billion-ton deposit. So from there, how big can it be? If it runs for 20 kilometers, your guess is as good as mine, but it's going to be very, very big.
And Lumwana was, let's say, $1 billion. What was the valuation of Lumwana? What did people say that was worth?
I love this part of the story. So let's look back at Lumwana. Lumwana was owned by a company called Equinox, okay? Barrick decides that Barrick wants to become, so Barrick, of course, famous for being Barrick Gold, one of the biggest gold producers in the world. Barrick decides, we don't want to just be a gold producer, we want to be a copper producer. How are we going to get a project that we can hang our hat on, and that becomes Barrick Copper, Barrick Metals, or Barrick Mining, or whatever you want to call it? So Barrick steps up 20 years ago, and they purchase Lumwana from Equinox. There's a competing offer that comes in. Another company steps up, and they make a $5.5 billion offer. Barrick says, no way. This is the asset we want. It's in the top place. We're going for it. And they bid $7.3 billion. So they bought 900 million tons in those days, 20 years ago. 900 million tons, 0.5% copper, and copper's $1.80 a pound. They pay $7.3 billion. Thanks to the work that Kevin Bonnell did with his team at Lumwana 4 years ago, they now have 1.62 billion tons at 0.52, and copper's over $5 a pound. Think about that valuation, and we're targeting something in the same range. It's astronomical. These are the biggest and most valuable copper deposits out there.
So where does this go next in terms of, there must be investors, there must be companies, there must be mining companies out there thinking, we'll have a bit of this. What's the plan? Is it to hold off, or is it to get more investment, to still continue to prove this out?
Yeah.
To actually go to the absolute limits of this vast range and say, look, it was 3 billion, it was 4 billion, I don't know how many billions it could possibly be. Is that the next step?
Well, let's break it into a couple of pieces. So how do we take an asset this big, 20 kilometers long? How do we take a big bite out of that? How do we show the world how big it is? First step, which we've talked about in the past, was raising money. We raised $10 million at 22 cents, okay? That gave us the runway to go out and do all that initial work at Dumbo, to do the IP survey, to do the work to get this thing to scale. And along the way, along comes Kevin Bonnell and ends up becoming our chief operating officer. And we're talking the top guy on the planet for this stuff. I mean, he's amazing. So we bring in Kevin Bonnell, becomes our chief operating officer. He's running the geology. Now we've got the top guy, we've got the cash, we take the steps forward, but we're still looking at this going, it's 20 kilometers long. Let's break it in half. Let's do the first 12. What's it going to take to get it, that distance? So through the marketing we've been doing, through the work we've been doing, Obviously, the stock has performed really well. We've gone from being a $20 million company to a $360 million company this year. Very, very big lift in our valuation. So about a month ago, we locked in $30.5 million at $1.35. That is a 7 to 10 times lift on our initial share price. I mean, how often do you raise money and have a 7 times lift between financings, right? So now we've got the capital. We actually have the wherewithal to get this thing to the finish line. Gives us enough capital to drill Dumbo off, to drill at least that first 12 kilometers. And the point being, by the time we get to 11 or 12, we have a soil anomaly that tells us it's 20 kilometers long. We've got drilling from First Quantum that tells us it's 20 kilometers long. We have every sign saying that this thing runs the entire distance. So we drill the first 12 and we keep things moving and we start aiming for that next 9.5 kilometers. And in the meantime, if the world can digest the fact that we've just developed a copper deposit or defined a copper deposit that runs for 12 kilometers, let the offers come. The goal is to sell this. I remember episode 1 sitting here and saying that when the time comes, this asset's going to be up for sale. We're not a mining company. We've always said from day one, I mean, I get tired of companies in this sector saying, and they arm wave and say, we're going to build a mine. We're not building a mine. We have no intent of building a mine. We're going to define the biggest deposit we can, and when the time is right, when Midnight Sun deems the timing right, we'll put this up for sale.
And when you raised that 35 million, did you have much trouble getting it?
You know, I love looking at things like this, and you know, when you think about financing, what it was like. I mean, different times in the market, different times in the junior sector, copper's in favor, copper's not in favor. We're in a heck of a good metals market right now. We're in a good mining market, but I don't think anybody was prepared for the kind of response we got to this financing. So we had offers. We have some very large institutional shareholders. We'd had offers from 50 cents up to raise money. And I said the same thing to every single one of them. The time isn't right. We need a big lift in our share price. We need to raise money over $1. So we launched this financing when Midnight Sun was trading at around $1.50, $1.40, somewhere in that range. We launched the financing at $1.35. I was on my way to Munich with one of my colleagues. When we launched the financing, it was $10 million. We were hoping to lock in 10 to 15 million. We landed in Munich, it was 25 million. We went out for dinner and came back, it was $65 million. We had $65 million in offers on the table, ready to go, ready to commit. So what we did was we sort of came up with a threshold that we thought was reasonable. We topped it out at 30.5, what was actually 26.5 million. And then there's a green shoe provision attached to that. So the final number is 30.5 million. And then to answer your question, it was done in less than 24 hours. It's actually about 18 hours.
And for people who are thinking about investing in this opportunity, have we missed the boat?
Absolutely not. This is the thing. If you're taking an asset like this, you're defining it, you're moving it forward, it's a long process. You know, and I mean, long is relative. We're talking 12 months, 18 months. This isn't long in the greater scheme of things, but there's different levels, different re-rates, different opportunities, and getting in at that very initial phase. So let's go back to maybe that 22-cent financing we did in May 2024. That's the earliest stage of funding that we did for this plan that we put in place. And that's the riskiest part of the plan, right? This is the very, very beginning. You're casting out, you're going and doing this, you have an idea, you have a theory, you have some early smoke that tells you there's a fire nearby. But that's the riskiest part of it. That's done now. That's out of the way. The discovery is real. We no longer have to sit here and talk about Dumbo as an if or a maybe or might be. It's real. We found it. We made the discovery. We've shown that Dumbo is real. Now we just have to show how big it is. So when you look at the opportunities both between Dumbo and, of course, Kaziba, the other target that we're working on, this is when the biggest multiples can happen. This is when we really lay it out for the world to see and show the size and scale and strength of this system. That's going to be the thing that drives us now and drives us towards M&A. We've de-risked it. We've put ourselves in a perfect position to get this defined with all the funding in place necessary to do it. So no, nobody's missed the boat. This is the point now where the real project really takes shape and we really get it to those new levels. And there's so many multiples and potential re-rates we can have from here. This is the most exciting part of the story.
And how many weeks, months, years does this play out over now? So when people are thinking about it, they go, okay, I've got to get in, but it's going to be a story that still builds for maybe a few more weeks and months yet.
Now, this part is cool. You typically go into a project like this, if you polled junior mining companies or junior exploration companies as to how they're going to drill, they'll generally put 1, 2, maybe 3 drill rigs on a project. We've put 5. So we're actually going out with 5 drill rigs. That's a drill hole every 2 days. We've taken over a lab locally, running 24-hour shift just to keep up with the amount of core, the amount of rock, the amount of material we're sending them for assay. So we are firing on all cylinders. And how quickly are we going to get it there? By Q3 next year, we anticipate that we'll be at 5 to 8 kilometers of that 12-kilometer strike length. We're talking 6 to 9 months. So this is quick from an exploration perspective. We've basically put this thing in overdrive. And now we're hitting it as hard as we can, as quick as we can. And that's part of our group ethos, is that, first of all, don't undercapitalize your project. Second of all, move the project forward as quickly as you can. Get it to the finish line. Do that for your shareholders. And the success comes behind it, and you can create lots of excitement, but of course, deliver. And it's all about execution at this point. So really for us, it's about speed, it's about getting it there. And that gives us kind of a 6 to 12 month timeline where we're going to be sitting on this and be able to show the world exactly how big Dumbo actually is.
And is the aim to basically take your time to do this so that what you're going to present as the opportunity to an outside investor, or particularly, let's say, a large mine, is the biggest, the largest, the most proven out deposit you can. And therefore, you're probably holding people back in a way until you have the full set of results in. When's the next big set going to come to our information?
It's a good question. So if you think about it this way, with all that drilling, with all that work, with everything we're doing, our turnaround on those assays is about 14 days, give or take. Let's call it 14 days to 3 weeks. And then our team gets that material, they analyze that material, they figure out what it means, then we can organize it into a news release and put it out and announce to the world what we found. And basically from here through that endpoint of that 12 kilometers of strike that we're looking to define, it's constant drill results, constant news from here to that point, and happening very, very fast. So in terms of what the next big catalyst is, the next big catalyst is more drill results. And the next big catalyst after that is more drill results. The next big catalyst after that is more drill results. And it is nonstop. We just keep going and we keep hitting it as hard as we can. Total conviction.
One of the exciting elements of this journey has been that this is a site that's got multiple opportunities. It's that optionality that for investors is that, well, if that was not quite working, well, there's this one. And if that was not quite working, well, we've got this one, which we're doing with these people over here. Could you maybe give me a sense of the totality of this site and those other parts of it, which are also incredibly exciting and in their own right?
For sure.
Extreme examples of deposits as well.
Absolutely. So, you know, one of the things with Midnight Sun that we set up was, in our business, you typically see a company maybe with multiple targets. They might have all exploration upside. Near-term production potential is the rarest thing. It's an ultra rare occurrence in our business, okay? It takes years to develop these projects in a lot of cases. What was cool about Midnight Sun from day one is that we didn't just have these large exploration targets, and we have 4 of those. So we actually have 4 different areas that we have a target, maybe not quite as big as Dumbo, but that has the potential to host one of these dome-style deposits that can reach 1 billion tons. We had something else that was really unique. As we went out and drilled, we had this project up to the northwest on our property. We would hit high-grade oxide copper repeatedly. Now, oxide copper is generally the surface part of one of these shallow sulfide deposits. It gets weathered, it gets oxidized, it turns into oxide copper. And you can't process oxide copper in the same circuit at a mine as you can sulfides. So usually when you find one of those, it's a sign of what's sitting at depth. It's usually a sign that there's a sulfide system underneath. In the case of Kaziba, which is our northwest project, there wasn't. There's nothing below it. We would drill through it, we'd hit ultra high grade oxide, nothing underneath. And we're going, what's going on here? As we pushed that project forward, we realized that there was an opportunity here for a standalone oxide copper deposit, and that would possibly help unlock near-term cash flow for Midnight Sun. So we started the process of drilling at Kaziba. We ended up defining a copper deposit that's all oxide copper. So it's a type of mineral called malachite, which is all acid-soluble copper, suspended in soil. Our first drill intercepts last year, 21 meters of 10.5% copper, 26 meters of 5.5% copper. We just put out a drill result this year that was 14.8 meters of 7.5% copper with a section that was 4 meters of 17% copper. I mean, these are, to put context to it, the average mine in the area is 0.56% copper. We're talking 10.5, 20, 14. I mean, these are spectacular, spectacular numbers. So we've moved that forward. We drilled 163 holes this year. RC, it's a type of drilling called RC drilling. 163 holes on that this year. We drilled 58 holes last year. We just drilled 41 diamond drill holes to define the grade and the continuity of the grade. We are going to find the avenue that works best for Midnight Sun to actually turn that oxide copper into an asset that somebody can process and turn it into cash that we can use to drive Dumbo to the finish line.
So effectively, you've got this wonderful opportunity to sort of scrape cash off the surface.
That's a great way of putting it. Yeah.
And use that to then fund the continued proving out of these other deposits.
Exactly.
And so that's 3 or 4 potential billion-ton deposits across the property, all of which you can prove out over the next few months.
Yeah, I would look at it like this. Dumbo is the flagship. There's no getting around it. Dumbo is the largest and highest grade soil anomaly on record in Zambia. We've now proven a discovery. We know it's real. We know we've got a new deposit. Now we're going to show how big it is. We also have Me2, another project, southwest corner of our property. We have Crunch, another target. We have a sulfide target at Kaziba. That's 3 more targets, all of which need to be addressed. But what we've done, we made a decision to take all of those extra targets, put them on the shelf, leave them for the time being, and be absolutely laser focused on Dumbo. You only get one shot, maybe in your career, at a project like this, and we're going full tilt. So this is absolute conviction, absolute laser focus. Let's drive Dumbo to the finish line. But part of that whole plan, part of the beauty of what we're building out, is having this near-term production scenario playing out at Kaziba, starts at surface, runs to a max depth of 30 meters. As you put it, copper you can virtually scrape off the surface and take to a production facility and turn it into cash. That's our plan for moving Dumbo forward with little to no dilution. And that is something you'll almost never see. So we have this plan that's multifaceted, but the unicorn in our business of near-term production coupled with large-scale exploration upside and on multiple levels.
Over this journey, I mean, you have had a couple of heart-stopping moments. You've had a few nervous moments because this is mining after all, it's exploration.
Yeah.
But as of now, you must feel pretty good, pretty confident. You must feel that this is exactly what you were expecting all those months, even years ago, when you first started out, a year and a half ago when we first started out. You said, this looks like it's going to be exciting.
Yeah.
Has this opportunity exceeded all your expectations? It feels like this is, as you say, not just a generation, but maybe even a multi-generational deposit, an opportunity that is still proving itself out, but it's proving itself out along the lines that you expect, where every time you're almost like hitting a jackpot every month.
Yeah, I think the best description of this whole path has been a roller coaster. There's high moments, there's been low moments, there's been great times, there's been tough times. I mean, the market itself has changed so dramatically in the last, call it 24 months. I mean, when we started this process together, we had just put the plan in place. We had just moved forward with this strategy that we had to unlock Dumbo. Financing was hard to come by. We needed to raise capital. We were searching, we were looking, we didn't have the funding we needed. And then it happened. $10 million, May 2024. We locked in the first 10 million. Then what happens? Kevin Bonnell comes along. He unraveled Lumwana for Barrick. He looks at our project and goes, this is the same thing, only bigger and we think higher grade. So he puts a plan in place geologically. We put the funding in place. Then we unlock 30 million. I mean, this has just been an absolutely wild ride, but only the beginning. And at the end of the day, it's been positive catalyst after positive catalyst. But this is where you need the fortitude. You need the strength and the guts to go after these things in our business. It's not an easy business, but the rewards are absolutely immense. We look at it now over this last 18 months. It's been incredible, but we're only getting started. This is just the beginning.
People who've been watching the series, I think in some ways it's always been, oh my God, this is too good to be true. You know, people have been watching this and thinking, no, there must be something wrong here. This just can't be true. And it seems to be proving itself out time and time again. And I guess I've got to ask you, I know we've said this before, but how on earth did you guys end up with this? Why wasn't this snapped up by all the big boys years and years ago? Because this just seems like the prime site.
I've been at this for 30 years. This is what makes our business so interesting and so exciting. I mean, this is, to a large degree, it's cowboy territory, right? You're out there doing things. It's the analogy I always use is Indiana Jones, right? This is the closest thing to Indiana Jones. We're getting out there, we're exploring, we're looking, we're finding. Every discovery is exciting and everyone is different. But this particular project is in an area that's completely dominated by majors. When I say majors, I'm talking big, globally important mining companies. This is not an area that a little $5 or $10 or $20 million company should be poking around. But this property happened to be owned by First Quantum, by our neighbors, and they had that property for a very long time. Now, if you wind the clock back 20 years, First Quantum was putting the Kansanshi mine into production, and that's next door to us. 1 billion tons, 0.66% copper, but the Zambian government brought in something that we actually think is very fair. We refer to it as the use it or lose it rule. And how it works is really simple. If a company has a huge amount of ground and they're only working on part of it, the Zambian government says, look, you have a timeline that you can do that, and then you have to relinquish some of that ground and leave it for other companies to come in, other groups to come in, pick that ground up and actually work on it. And the idea is to keep everything progressing all the time, not leave things hoarded by 1 or 2 companies, just sitting on projects that otherwise could be moving ahead. Going back 20 years, they've got 20 licenses and the government says, hey, you can keep the 5 you're working on developing the mine, but the other 15 should probably relinquish those and let somebody else go in and get them. A speculator, somebody that's not in mining, picked that property up. And we happened to be the lucky group that got to look at it and made a quick decision that this was the one to go after. And we did. We picked it up. It's been 12 years. This is the thing. It all takes timing, good copper market, ability to raise money, frothy junior mining sector. And over the last 24 months, we've done exactly what we set out to do 12 years ago. But this is the classic 12-year overnight success.
Having been the one that got away, presumably now in this kind of end game of M&A, you're hoping that you won't be the one that got away because someone's going to come after you now in a good way.
Absolutely. This is it. This is the time. So we're doing everything it takes to position Midnight Sun for that ultimate M&A transaction. We have what we think is going to be the newest, biggest discovery out there. We certainly have an exciting discovery. We certainly think it has the scale. We think we can put it in the same range as all of our peers and all of the mines that surround us. And that should position us for the ultimate M&A transaction. And we want to make sure that the timing is right. We're not ready yet. We're going to get it to a point where we feel like it's ready. And when the time comes, as I said in the very first episode, we will put this up for sale.
That's what this is all about. So if this story has hooked your attention, like it has for so many others over the last year, do your research and check out what's happening over at Midnight Sun, because it feels like there is so much more to come. Meanwhile, we will do all we can, as ever, to keep you up to speed with this fascinating discovery.